Talking with the experts.
Welcome to episode 271 with Justin Herald.
Well, because they're not trained to. They just get given a job, and that's it. They're expected to look after, and that's what that will never happen in my business, because that and small business owners watching this will understand this. How my staff behave and act and operate reflects on, do I pay my house off? So they've got to, and my job is to make sure I pay them so they can pay their house off. So it's got to come back to me. And unless I set those parameters, unless I actually have strict guidelines and the way that I want them to act, then I can't complain. And this is where what's going on at the moment. There's no training. A lot of people whinging and complaining that the staff are not looking after their customers, but they're not doing the simple thing by going, oh, hang on, maybe it's because I'm not doing anything with my staff. And consumerism in the last 2 years has changed massively. So now you don't get a second chance.
Are you a non-techie, introverted author, speaker, coach, consultant, or entrepreneur wanting to make an impact through podcasting? In 30 days working one-on-one with you, I can show you how to build authority and credibility for your business. I'm inviting you to shift your thoughts about podcasting and allow yourself to expand into the next level of your life and business by joining the Podcast Wizard 30-day program as I help you take your podcast from idea to launch. Find it at rose-davidson.com under the Work With Me tab.
Welcome to Talking with the Experts. This is where we discuss great ideas to take your business to the next level. How do we know these ideas work? Well, it's because we're talking with business owners who are using these ideas. Business owners who have years of experience and expertise. All things business by business owners for business owners. And now, here is your host, Rose Davidson.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. I'm your host, Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. And you can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. And today my guest is Justin Herald. And Justin, at the age of 25, with only $50 to his name, set about changing the course of his life. And he created Attitude Incorporated, a clothing brand that became an international licensing success that turned over more than $30 million per year. He has been named International Entrepreneur of the Year and has other accolades to his name. And today we're going to be talking about customer culture and major motivation. Welcome, Justin, and thanks for joining me today.
No problems at all.
So how did you start your business with just $50 in your pocket?
Well, it actually wasn't $50. I had to borrow the $50. I only had $1.25 in my pocket at the start. I'm probably what they would refer to as an accidental entrepreneur, I guess. I started my first business purely and wholly and solely just to upset someone in my dad's church who kept on telling me I had an attitude problem. So I just thought, well, if I can get a few of my mates to wear a shirt that said I love my attitude problem on the back of it, I didn't have to go to church anymore to upset her. They could do it on my behalf. And that's the only reason I started that, or did that. It wasn't even a business. And on the day that we wore the shirts, people came up and said, could I buy one? And I thought, well, I suppose you could. And I had no clue what I was doing when I started. I've always, and still do to this day, 30 years later, but abided by the common sense philosophy in business. But that was right from the start with pricing. So I needed to sell one shirt to make two more. No business acumen there. That just made sense to me at the time. And it took off big time, right place, right time. I get some people saying I was lucky, so I've been lucky for the last 30 years. So it's taken me a long time to be an overnight success. And I learnt business pretty quick, but I've always had my slant on business because I think sometimes people do too much businessy stuff that gets in the way of growing anything. And for me, I'm not sure if you've got kids, but you see those parents in shopping centres and they say to little Johnny, if I've got to count to three, Well, if I've got to count my kids know that I'm upset. So it's the same way when it comes to business. If things aren't working, I'll figure that out pretty quickly, and then I'll change it really quickly as well.
I've been in business now for 6 years. It's had its ups and downs, obviously, as most businesses do. But yeah, it's getting now. It's taken me this long to actually get some traction.
Yep.
It does. It's so, I mean, you were lucky. You were almost an overnight success because you had something that people wanted.
Yeah, I did, but I also worked 2 part-time jobs for 2 years because I didn't want to take any of the money that was going into the business away from the business, and once again, no one taught me that. See, I started Attitude before the internet even existed, so we didn't have the ability, and I think it's a bad thing at the moment, to have multiple streams of information. I didn't have that. And when I started, owning your own business was sort of, you couldn't get a real job, so you had to try and do something else. That wasn't a thing back in those days.
No, 30 years ago. And it really, 30 years isn't that long ago. However, so much has changed. I mean, I remember we had a fish and chip shop back in the early 2000s, and marketing was done face to face. You went to, networking events, and internet was just starting out. It wasn't that popular because people didn't understand how it worked. So yeah, for our business to be successful, it was, letterbox drops.
Yeah. Well, I think there's an advantage to that if you've gone through that, especially like in the last 2 years that everyone's gone through in business. Those who started their business for the first time just prior to that would have struggled more than those who started years and years ago and would have had to do the old school hard work. And so for me, during the last 2 years, it was about going back to when I first started with not having any idea, because everything was out of my control. And but I'd experienced that before, so it wasn't as big as a shock to some of my mentoring clients that just started a business prior, and they're, not that I can do this, but they're pulling their hair out because they'd never experienced something being thrown at them that they weren't expecting.
Yeah, so you're now the managing director of Customer Culture, and it's a customer service and customer engagement training company. And you teach your staff how to give great advice, but more importantly, why it's needed. So what made you change tact?
Look, it's the reason that I've never spent a single cent in advertising in 30 years, even with Attitude. First and foremost, because I didn't have any money to start off with, so that was a bit of a given. But something that when I started my business, I started in a place up here called Parklea Markets, and straight away I was surrounded by 200 to 300 competitors. Now, they weren't all selling T-shirts, but people went in there to spend money. So whether they're going to spend money on my thing or the next widget down the corridor, it didn't matter. So we had to provide, right early on, we had to provide something that they would remember. Now, I didn't want them to just remember the product. They had to remember the process. And so back in those days, I came up with a thing, and it's gone through all of my staff still to this day, and we call it, we go after our customer's customer. And that means anytime I have an experience or a touch point with anyone, my staff included, anyone, they have to have such a great experience. They have to tell someone else about it. And so that's why I haven't had to spend any money, is because other people who deal with us will then go and tell other people about it based upon they're not getting any good experiences anywhere else. So I've always done great customer service. I speak around the world now via Zoom a lot, and a lot of it used to be in the olden days, and still is, a lot about the customer experience and the customer journey. And so I just decided to separate some of that. So instead of just including it in what I did, I started Customer Culture, because the reality is, if you look after your customer, here's a bit of a deep and meaningful statement, but if you look after your customer, they're going to come back. It's weird. But you'll find now that a lot of people aren't actually doing that. It's a very tofu experience that we're getting. It's there. I don't understand what tofu is there for, to be honest, but it's there on the plate. It's really got nothing going for it. It's a substitute for something, but it's got nothing to offer. And that's what most consumers are getting these days. So if you add a bit of flavor to that, then that's going to be something they remember. And the way I've always taught my staff, the way I teach people when I go and train the staff, is if you have an experience with me, the next time you're at Woolworths doing something totally opposite and totally different, I want you to compare that experience to what the conversation or how you dealt with me, and which is not that difficult, and it costs nothing to actually be nice. And the other thing is, and the main reason I started it back in my day, training was a massive thing. Before I even started Attitude, when I had other jobs, we were always trained, constantly trained. That doesn't happen anymore. It's bizarre why business owners do not spend any money on training or any time on training. I get it in a way. They don't know how. They don't know how to come up with the content, and they're time poor, which is bizarre, but they're time poor. So I decided to come up with something that would actually facilitate that. Now, for me, I start all my businesses, and I have started them all, by being pissed off. That seems to be my thing. And I can't stand it when I go out and spend my own money and I'm not getting an experience that I give out on a daily basis. So I thought,
isn't it terrible? I hate it.
Well, I've got this theory, right? As business owners, we've got this tank. We'll call it the customer service tank. So on a Monday morning, it's full. And all week we give out of that tank. And then we go out, let's just say on the weekend, to spend our own money. That's when we're supposed to get that tank filled back up again. I'm not sure about you, but I'm running on empty at this point in time because there's nothing coming back to me. And it's such a simple thing that you can do to give your customers an amazing experience, and it will grow your business massively. And you haven't spent a great deal of money on doing that. It's just about educating your staff, because the culture in my business has to come from me. And that's fine. But if I'm not teaching that culture and just expecting people just to jump on board, and I never read resumes, because as if you're going to say, I really suck at customer service on me, you're going to tell me everything you want me to know. So I will then hire based upon personality, which is fairly few and far between these days, but I'll hire on personality. I can teach you the skill, but I'm going to also teach you my culture. And then with your flavor, you take my culture out. And it's not about having a whole heap of little Justins running around. I hire on personality, and their personality is different to mine. And that's why it is lucky for me. This is a luck thing that I started that properly just before COVID. Funnily enough, Australia is a very apathetic market when it comes to training, but overseas during COVID, they just snapped it up left, right, and centre because their staff are sitting at home doing nothing anyway.
Yeah, I good customer service is really far and it's not something that you come across every single day.
No, it's not, but it's quite easy to train. And that's why, like, I created, it's called a learning management system, the platform that it sits on, because I wanted to make sure that, I didn't want a compliance model. I wanted a competency model where all the answers go back to the owner or the manager or whatever, and then they know the exact area that they need to fix in the people, as opposed to a blanket fix. And that's why it has been accepted quite well, because it actually is giving proper answers to where the actual issues are inside a business.
Yeah. Sometimes you go to the supermarket, and sometimes one staff member will absolutely stand out because they've just made your experience, especially if you're having a really crappy day. You've got to do your supermarket shopping, and you find one person is just full of beans and it makes your day, because they've done something just so small. It only has to be something really tiny, but it's brightened up your day, made you smile, made you laugh, whatever. And it's not hard to do. It's just like manners have gone out the window. A please and a thank you now, it seems to be like pulling hen's teeth. It's quite difficult for people to say just those two words.
Well, because they're not trained to. They just get given a job, and that's it. They're expected to look after, and that's what that will never happen in my business, because and small business owners watching this will understand this. How my staff behave and act and operate reflects on, do I pay my house off? So they've got to, and my job is to make sure I pay them so they can pay their house off. So it's got to come back to me. And unless I set those parameters, unless I actually have strict guidelines and the way that I want them to act, then I can't complain. And this is where what's going on at the moment. There's no training. A lot of people whinging and complaining that the staff are not looking after their customers, but they're not doing the simple thing by going, oh, hang on, maybe it's because I'm not doing anything with my staff. And consumerism in the last 2 years has changed massively. So now you don't get a second chance. Like, you don't get a second chance at a first impression. That's the one thing we don't get anymore. So, and the consumer's got more choice than ever before. And the other thing that's happening is, whilst you might have the greatest widget under the sun, the way the consumerism is now, they might be wanting to buy what you've got, but then might go and buy something totally the opposite because they just want to spend money. So our competition now is not just who's in our little area of expertise or what we do as a business. Our competition is every other business that's on the planet, because I've got to keep their attention. And if I can't keep their attention, they're going to go and find it somewhere else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you are the author of 8 international bestsellers.
Yeah.
Would you like to please go through them and tell me a little bit about what each is going to, help your readers with?
Yeah, sure. My first one, so once again, I'm an accidental author. I was approached by 5 publishers when I sold Attitude, and it was, I like trying to make people laugh, but I found the publishing world that had no sense of humor whatsoever. So I was called into this one meeting and they said, we would like you to write an autobiography. And I said, look, I don't want to write a book about cars. I didn't find that funny. And I said, look, I don't actually want to write a book about my life, because I was 32 at the time. I said, I haven't had one. And so I said, well, I wouldn't mind writing about how Attitude worked. And it's not so much a business thing. It's about what I had to get right up here, because, I mean, I had $1.25 at 25 for a reason. And so Would You Like Attitude was my first book. And that's all about how I actually changed the way I thought. I'm not a rah-rah guy. It's just practical stuff. My second one was, I wanted to call Get Off Your Ass, but they wouldn't let me. It was called What Are You Waiting For? And that was more about those people that have ever been in a situation that you know you want to do something, you've had plans to do something, but you've never done it. So that was that one. Then my third book was How to Grow a Business Without Spending a Single Cent, which is my main keynote that I get asked to speak at conferences, which is the attitude, how I did all of that with no money, which is actually quite easy, to be really honest. I've got to remember them all now. My fourth one was It's All a Matter of Attitude. So that was that I just took all my slogans that I had ever done, and there's always a meaning behind what I do. Having a slogan that goes for 3 paragraphs doesn't really read well on the back of a t-shirt. Then I did, my favorite book was Prosperity on Purpose, which is there's no point making money if you're going to not do anything good with it. And if you've got a purpose, and it actually makes it easy to reach a level of financial success. So that was my favorite book I've ever written. That one took me 6 days to write, that one. Then I did, what was next? How to Grow Your Business Without Spending a Single Cent. I know I've already done the one. You've got a great idea for a business, now what? Which is all about helping people who have got an idea but don't know what to do. And that's a great one that we've run through globally. They're all around the world. Then there was Get Motivated, which is just all my articles that I've ever written for newspapers and stuff. And then my last one was Forget the Elephants, Watch Out for the Fleas, which is more about, everyone says don't sweat the small stuff. Sweat the small stuff, because they're the thing. That's the thing that's going to actually stop you, that we create into a big thing after a while, because most of the time we let it go. And so for me, for best example, I don't have a 5-year plan. Never have had one. Don't have a 1-year plan. I have a 1-day plan, and that is what can I do better than I did yesterday, and that's the only thing I can control. So it's not that I don't want anyone to think that you shouldn't have a 5-year plan. That's not the way my head works. And the way we grow businesses, the way that we operate is through our personality. And most people, if their business isn't working, it's because they're not going through their personality. And my personality is I'm a very impulsive human being. So I'm going to run my business that way. And that works for me. And so you just got to figure out how it works for you. But that book, yeah, so they're all my books. And look, I was assuming I was going to get a ghostwriter when I was first approached, and I was told quickly that doesn't happen. So I found it very easy to write books, and I've got another 2 that I've done, but I've just now got to find another publisher, because I don't want to self-publish. I like having a publisher do all the work for me. But yeah, so we'll see what happens in the coming future.
You and I could be twins, to be honest, because I am an impulsive person and I don't have plans. I just plan for the day. And even then, I chop and change. It doesn't, I mean, if I plan to do something, sometimes something shiny comes up and, takes my attention away. And that's how I operate my life. I think, to me, I've had long-term plans and they've not come to fruition for whatever reason. And so I thought, no, just live for the day and it'll all come out in the wash at the end.
Yeah. And if it doesn't, you're doing it wrong. If it comes out, you're doing it right. It's
absolutely
pretty
correct.
simple stuff, really.
Justin, where can people find you if they want to book you to speak or to learn from you, use your training program or whatever?
Yeah, sure. JustinHerald.com is more my speaking and mentoring side of the business, and CustomerCulture.com is the customer service stuff as well. And there is, in case anyone is interested in this one, there's JuniorEntrepreneur.com, which is a whole online course for kids and teaching them how to start a business. And that's one thing that the schools aren't doing anything well about, is helping kids actually become independent and resilient. So I thought, well, I'll do that. There's another Justin Herald pissed me off. So I started that thing during COVID, and that's just gone nuts globally. It's just the amount of parents that don't know how to help their kids start a business, but that's going well. So, I can't do one thing. I've got to have a lot of things because I just can't stand. This Zoom's hard for me because I've got to stand still. So that's why I like my keynotes when I'm in front of people. I can walk around, but so I've got to always be busy and doing stuff, but just making sure that I'm providing certain types of products or services that are actually going to assist people in business or creating a business either. But that's where you can find me.
Terrific. Now, I agree with you about the schools. They don't prepare kids. They never even prepared us as kids leaving school. You're expected to matriculate at year 12 and then just go out into the workforce, and you have no bloody clue about how to do your finances and how to look for a job and how to dress and how to treat other people, because you've just been hanging around with kids all the time. And
there's also no practical application, and that's why I started Junior Entrepreneur, because the day that I started Attitude was the day that I then figured out that school made sense. I realised that I need to know maths. I realised I need to know how to English, because I'm going to have to talk to people and write to people. I needed to then converse with people. There was none of that practical application that was at school, and this is where the one market that we're getting massive traction in is what they call the disengaged youth now with Junior Entrepreneur, which we used to call them rat bags. But we're finding a lot of parents are coming back to us going, well, my son's now trying, or daughter is trying harder at school now, because they now, based upon what we teach them in the course, they now know that they need to price things correctly, and they need to know what profit's going to be there. And if they don't know how to add up, then that's not going to work. And so I'm glad that that's all happening. I've tried to talk to the education department about it, but apparently teachers need to come up with the curriculum, not the people that have actually done it themselves. So that's another headbutt moment that I've had recently, but it keeps on going.
Bureaucracy at its best. Yes. Yeah. Kids need more life skills, more now than we ever did, because we could muddle along and things seem to work out fine. But in today's world, there's so much more competition for jobs and all sorts of other things. So I think life skills taught at school is a great thing, because parents maybe aren't equipped to give those life skills.
Well, they're not. Well, they may or they may not be. Like, I've got my own opinion. We've got 5 daughters between my wife and I, so I can give them my opinion. But my opinion is also based upon how I was brought up and in the time I was brought up. Like I'm constantly on my kids to stop getting all their information off the internet, because just because someone puts it up there doesn't mean it's correct. So I'd be rather have taught them, go after proven advice and results, as opposed to someone on TikTok that's now come up with some fancy, funky way of doing things. Just because they've said it doesn't mean it's right. So that's where, I'm glad that I was brought up in a way that we were taught that there's always someone that knows more than you, so go and find them. And as my dad's taught us, go and learn from someone else's mistakes and don't make your own. So that's the sort of stuff that was sort of always available to us. And I think the problem now with this generation, and I can talk about it because I've got too many of them, they're just surrounded by a lot of white noise. And whilst they think it makes sense, we sit back and go, yeah, that's not going to work at all. And that's where, that's why I've got to keep on a few things. I've got to keep on providing information to the next generation, but I've also got to keep myself current too. So I can't be talking about stuff that worked for me, in 1999. I've got to be talking about stuff that's working for me in 2022. And so that's, could have retired a long time ago, apparently, but I actually like doing stuff. I'd get pretty bored if I was doing nothing.
Yeah, same. I could give up my business a long time ago, but I don't. I like to do what I do, and now that I've found podcasting, I love that even more. So
yeah, good on you. I started doing it. I've done a few, but I don't know. I just got sick and tired of it. Only because I just was doing it myself. I wasn't interviewing anyone, mind you, but it was just a bit lonely just talking to a microphone.
Yeah,
I prefer being in front of a live audience, and thankfully now we're getting back to all of that now, which is great.
Yeah. So where's your next speaking gig?
My next speaking gig, I'm about to go tomorrow. I'll go off on holidays up to Queensland. So I've got one up there for a corporate while we're away. And then I think what day May. Yeah. So I've got a few in May. And so they're all starting I've got a lot of these Zoom ones, but
they're not quite the same, are they?
No. Well, what's happening now with a lot of corporates with Zoom, nothing to do with me, someone somewhere complained about privacy issues with people being able to see inside their home if they were on a Zoom call. And so what a lot of corporates now are doing is making everyone turn off their cameras. So I'm now presenting to maybe an audience of 200 or 300 either staff or people in a conference, and I can't see anyone. So I go off action and reaction, and it's a really difficult thing. I still do a good job, but I don't know.
It's not the same though, is it?
No. Well,
you need that facial, recognition and eye contact and.
Well, I use a lot of humour and not trying to be funny. It is funny, my story. But when you can't see someone, you don't know if they're laughing. You don't know if they're not laughing.
You don't even know if they're
there. They might just, go and make a cup of coffee and never come back. But yeah, so the live things are the ones that really float my boat. And now overseas is starting to pick up again, which is good. So we'll get back to that again. Good
stuff. Now, last words of wisdom from you, Justin. I would love to hear something brilliant.
Well, I don't know about that. I just think, I think people are trying too hard at the moment. The main thing, especially people in business, are not putting any value on giving a great deal of value to is the basics. And you can go and we find this a lot with corporates that come to us with the customer culture thing. And we had one the other day. And look, I can't think as stupid as some of these people act, but they came to us and they said, we've got a massive problem with customer feedback. We've got a massive problem with the way that our staff are treating our customers. It is affecting our bottom line. And I said, because it costs $97 to do a course per staff member. It's nothing really. And I said, okay, well, we sent them through the quote and they came back and they said, oh, look, we've got a problem. I said, okay, what's that? They said, well, we've got to take the training out of the marketing budget. So we'd rather spend money on advertising and marketing instead of this. And I said, so what you're telling me is, you've got a problem. So you want to now advertise to get more customers to be treated like crap. Like that makes no sense whatsoever. Or train your staff correctly and the customer will go out and bring more customers for you for free. And so there's a lot of businesses doing the funky stuff, not doing the basic stuff. And if you're a small business owner watching this, stick to the basics. You don't have to do anything else. It's 1 + 1 = 2. It's always going to be that way if you keep it, and use common sense, which common sense is like deodorant. The people that really need to use it rarely do. So if we just use the common sense approach, if it smells too good to be true, probably is. If you think you're going to make a lot of money in a short period of time, you're probably not. All that sort of stuff, if you just keep to that. And the other thing, the last thing I'll say on that is make sure that you have got tangible goals. Not, I want to be successful, not, I want people to know my name. It's stuff like, I want to go on a holiday with my family. It's stuff, I want to pay my house off. It's stuff that you can reach out and touch, because if you can't reach out and touch it, it means you're not doing something correctly to get to where you want to touch something. So don't just stay to the tangible stuff, not the non-tangible. I just want to, what did someone say the other day? I just want people to know my why. Like, what who cares? Like, just figure out, are you taking your family out for dinner or are you going on a holiday? That's the stuff that you should be worried about, not, do people know your why? So it's just keep it real simple.
Absolutely perfect advice. I think it's the most common sense approach I've seen and all heard from in a long time. So thank you for sharing that.
I'm a simple man.
Justin, it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and to hear from you and your story. It's very, very fascinating.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
So yeah.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Talking with the Experts, hosted by Rose Davidson. Make sure you have a look at our back catalogue over at talkingwiththeexperts.com. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any episode. We look forward to your company next time. Talking with the Experts.